How I feel about stepping into your power. I mean, yeah, that's a good question. Everything for me is from starting within. You have to feel like you have something to say. You just have to feel that what you do matters, how you go about your life. I think noticing what makes you unique, noticing your little quirks and really celebrating those. And that's how I started stepping into my creativity, was because I was like, I'm weird and that's cool.
My name is Francesca Phillips, and you're listening to the Good Space Podcast, a show where we help you find peace and power in work, relationships, and intuition. Welcome to the Good Space Podcast. Today I have an exciting, fun, amazing guest. Jamie Varon is an author, designer, digital course creator, and creative consultant living in Calabasas, California. Her first nonfiction book, Radically Content, which I'm holding in my hand right now, was published in 2022, and the journal companion, Radically Content, the journal, will be published in spring of 2023. She's also working as an executive producer and consultant on a feature film based on Radically Content, and her debut novel, Main Character Energy, love that title, will be published in fall of 2023. She created a digital course called Live with Intention that has helped over 1,200 people live more intentional lives. And her writing has been featured on Huffington Post, Medium, Thought Catalog, Teen Vogue, The Liberty Project, and many more. Her Instagram also has a treasure trove of some of her incredible reflections and writings. We repost it all the time on our Instagram and share it in our daily email. So Jamie, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today.
Of course. Wow. It's a lot when you list it out like that. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And what I love too, and which I'm sure we'll touch on, is the fact that you are a creative and you're not afraid to touch different kinds of creativity. It's not like, oh, I just have to be a writer and that's all I'm doing. It's like, no, creativity shows up and pops up in different ways, and you've been able to follow that for yourself. And I think that's amazing. But I do know as well that we're due for a Taylor Swift chat, because when she started the opening night of her Eras tour, your Instagram stories were just like, I'm like, me and Jamie are on the same wavelength. The energy, I don't know what it is, because I've seen many artists go on tour. I have a background working in the music industry. I've seen it. But for some reason, the first night of Taylor's Eras tour, and I feel like even other nights, this energy is just palpable, right? It's like an energy shifted in the cosmos, this creative, powerful energy. It started affecting me. I wanted to create. I wanted to level up what I was bringing into the world. And I know that we watched the live streams. You've actually seen it in real life. You've gone to her show, I think, in Vegas, right?
Yeah.
It just really hit home for me, just seeing Taylor's creative journey, that she's someone who not only who works at her craft every day, she's prolific. She claims her creative power and right to create and perform over and over. And I feel like this was a culmination of that. Like, wow, look at what this woman has been able to accomplish. And she gives every one of us permission to do the same. Like, it's magnetic. You can't help but feel like, if this is possible for her, what's possible for me? So I want to talk about this from a creative, spiritual perspective, and like, what did witnessing this inspire within you?
So I've always loved Taylor, but something has definitely shifted in this new era of eras for her. And it's just such a celebration of her talent. And I feel like she is just really in some sort of flow with it, of it's not for proving a point. It's not for trying to do things a certain way that other people have told her to do it. Like when I saw Eras in Vegas, I did see it in Vegas. It was like kind of spur of the moment, last minute. And I was just like, this is nothing like I've ever seen before. This is so different. And as a creative, like, I don't think I really truly appreciated how much energy and time and conviction and belief goes into someone like Taylor Swift until I started really, really honoring my own creativity. Like I've done things in sort of starts and stops, and I've had moments, you said I'm someone that does reinvent and change and see my creativity. That's really, I stepped into that probably the most in like 2019, 2020. It wasn't always as fluid, and I wouldn't say effortless, but like it wasn't always the top of mind the way that it is now. And so now I look at Taylor and I'm like, this takes an incredible amount of conviction. I mean, for her to do a show with 44 plus songs, 3 hours and 15 minutes, every single song has a story. Some of it was like performance art. Some of it was just spectacle. Some of it was just absolutely beautiful. And she could just show up with a guitar on the stage. She doesn't have to do any of that. And I think people think that like that's hard, that's easy to do, but actually the motivation to go above and beyond and to really just do it for the joy of like, what's possible? Where can my creativity take me today? That takes a lot of effort and it takes a lot of work. The thing that I've always loved about Taylor, and especially with this Eras tour, is like she shows her effort. She does not make that look easy. She's not sitting there going, oh, I just wake up and it's like this. She's like, I write my own songs. I crack open my chest to write these incredible lyrics. And then I spend every second with my collaborators making it better and better. And I go off, when it's the pandemic, I go off to a cabin and I work on something totally different that who could have written folklore after like Reputation and after 1989? I mean, it's like wild to go to make that leap. And after Lover, like you go from Lover, which is such a pop album, to Folklore, and people think, well, she's Taylor Swift, it's easy. It's like, no, she's Taylor Swift. She doubts herself. She wonders how it's going to be received. I just get so inspired by that because it's my ethos. I'm like, please, can Taylor Swift just read my book? Like, I just want her to read my book so bad. She'd vibe with it so much because I'm just like, that's my ethos. It's like create for the joy of it. Don't look at how it's going, how it's doing, how it's performing, how it's this. I mean, all of that, there's a time and place for it, sure. But also just going where your inspiration takes you. Like, to me, I think that is probably the thing that sets me apart, is like, I don't really follow what everyone else is doing. I might do that sometimes, and then I get totally lost in myself because I'm trying to compare and I'm trying to do someone else's version. But I think the reason right now that we're all so in love with what Taylor's doing is because we can feel how authentic it is and how much it's driven by passion and just following creativity. Her Eras tour and her show is such a celebration of that, because it's just like, she went into that going, whatever idea I can dream up, I'm going to do it. And it's like, oh my God, do it. Like, yes, have these like random huge feathers on, like it was just so wild. And for me, that was so inspiring.
Yes. Oh, you said it so perfectly. It is amazing to see someone at that level just keep expanding their creativity and magnifying it. And to be clear, we're not lost on the fact that she has this insanely supportive parents who guided her. She never really had to have any other job, right? Like by the time she was 13, that was her trajectory. She was just on the train. And I'm like, that in itself is magical to me, because she got to keep that youthful focus on creating and didn't really have to like deviate from it, which I'm like, I wish all of us could do that. You know what I mean? That's a great condition to evolve creatively. And then also, obviously, she has teams doing her social, doing all those other things. She gets to just focus on the creativity. So obviously we recognize that. But like you said, within that, it is extremely hard to not only dream as big as that, create as big as that, but to have the conviction, like you said, to stand by those ideas. Like, most people can't even feel that way just on a smaller scale. And the fact that she has so many people telling her, no, you should do this. Oh, that's going to kill your career, this and this, but she just does it anyway. That too is like, takes her to the next level. And so I'm curious what your thought is. First of all, so again, I can repeat these questions, but I had a couple of questions around this. So have you ever looked at someone like Taylor and tried to extrapolate what works for her and see how it can help you in spreading your message more? I know I have for sure, but I'm curious if you've done the same. And then what would you say to someone who didn't start young or isn't young right now or has other work that they have to do? They have to work jobs, right? Or they don't have teams of people. Like, how can we distill the essence of what's worked for her for ourselves?
Right now, especially because I'm in such a creatively fertile place with all my ideas, and I have, like you listed out at the beginning, this is like the first time I'm actually doing all the things that I have wanted to do. So I started young and I was 13 and I, got this. I am publishing my first novel. I will be 38 when I published my first novel. That wasn't the plan. I was supposed to be a novelist at 21, but things shifted. But I still take such a massive amount of inspiration from her because I can tell and I can know that no matter how much you have the team surrounding you, I actually know that making those decisions that she makes and focusing on the creativity and the art and the fan experience, most especially, it actually is harder when you have all of those things. It's actually harder to reinvent when you start at 13. So I kind of look at it as like, I'm really glad that I got to know myself now. I know myself better because actually her trajectory is it's outside of the norm. She started in country and then she pivoted to pop and then pivoted to folk and then pivoted. I mean, that's unheard of. And so that's why it's so inspiring. And that's probably why we're so inspired by it. But I don't look at her as someone that I wish I had started at her age, because I actually think it's much harder to start at that age, even though it seems like, wow, it would be nice to have things figured out. It's like, but most likely the majority of people that get that kind of success that young, they actually have a real hard time knowing who they are and having any conviction in their voice, because what happens is people start telling them who they need to be. And so I really see it as such a beautiful thing that like no one can tell me who I get to be. So I really like that this has happened for me a little bit later, because I know myself better. I can hold myself in the ups and downs and all the different things that happen. And then what I'll say to people who, do have that kind of like the day job and the next thing, I mean, no one needs to have built everything from spending 8 hours a day on their creativity. I bet even Taylor Swift doesn't do that. She takes breaks. She has focused time that she writes her album. I mean, if you even look at this tour, that must have taken hours and hours and hours every day just to practice and get her fitness to the point where she could do that tour. So she hasn't been just focused on that. There's just other things that have taken her time. But I mean, she's probably not an example of how you can spend your daily life. Her creativity is relatable, but her actual daily life is probably not very relatable. I really don't think you need more than an hour a day to really make substantial progress on whatever you want to do. Actually, if you're just getting started, an hour a day is almost too much, because you got to build the momentum. You got to practice. You got to start small. And so I wouldn't think I think a lot of people go, well, if I don't have all day to spend on my creativity and the full time to spend on my creativity, I'm not going to go anywhere. It's like, I actually have had that where all of a sudden I had the full time to spend on my creativity and you get in your head. So look at it as a good thing that like you don't have to worry about the same things that maybe other people worry about if they take that big risk. You can spend the time really harnessing your consistency. The main thing that I think people don't realize is that once you start making your creative life becomes your job, the one constant thing is like you need to know how to be creative on demand. Otherwise, it's going to be real hard. Like if you can't write until you feel inspired, I mean, then writing a book's going to be tough, because you have to write even when you don't feel inspired. And you have to, the only way you write a book is if you show up and write it. Like there's the only way you're going to write 70 to 80,000 words. And you probably know from like songwriting, it's sometimes you get the idea and sometimes you just have to flex the muscle and like get it out. So, I just don't think like any of those things are really negatives if we don't see them that way. And if we don't have this expectation that like everyone's path should be the same. If everyone made it at 13 years old, I mean, I want to see the art from people who made it at 50. I don't want the same exact kind of art. I love those stories. I mean, look at like Pedro Pascal right now. He's amazing.
TikTok, he's just, I actually watched what's the movie he's in with Nicolas Cage? It's The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. I only watched it because of how much he's blowing up on TikTok, and he's amazing. And he's in The Mandalorian. He actually is The Mandalorian, which I didn't even realize. So yeah, you're right. It's crazy.
I want to celebrate someone who's like killing it at 20. And it's like, wow, cool. You had a vision when you were young and you got it. And then I love the people who like Pedro Pascal are having their moment at a long time. I mean, he's probably been grinding at it for a while that nobody was paying attention. I mean, I remember he was in Game of Thrones. He wasn't the star of Game of Thrones. He was a supporting character that was only on a few episodes. So, it's like that slow climb. And then for me, that's really important to always celebrate people at different ages so that I don't feel like I have to make it at a certain age. I can just keep going and getting better and better. So that's really important to me because I think if we have this obsession with, if I don't make it before I'm like 25, 30, so then I should give up. It's like, well, no, because we still need beautiful art and we still see people who are doing things well into, their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, even more. So I think like the more that we celebrate that within ourselves, and then the more that we celebrate that societally, the more it'll keep happening.
Going back to what you said, that most people don't need more than an hour, 100% agree. And I have experienced both sides of it, where I had a ton of time and I wasn't creating for the right reasons. So it didn't even matter that I had all this time because it wasn't hitting. There wasn't truth. I didn't really have something to say sometimes when I was creating in that mindset, versus now when I create, it's because I have something to say. It's because I'm feeling inspiration. And like you said, sometimes it's not, but I just trust that what's meant to come out will come out. And I have less time now because of my circumstances, but it's more powerful. And I think too, that's kind of what you said with Taylor, like she's doing it for the joy. It's authentic. It's connected to who she's speaking to. And I know you are really, really good at that, which is something I was in awe of reading Radically Content. I mean, I wish you could see the margins of my book. It just has so many notes, so many, yes, oh my gosh, I feel for you, good. Like I was cheering you on too in the book. Like that's how raw and honest and truthful your writing is. And a lot of writers can't get to that point. And I've spoken to a few who said, I'm scared to be truthful and honest. And I know at one point you were, because you talk about your journey of being a little more closed off or negative. And so how do you encourage or recommend people to strip away all of that stuff first, right? Like all of the, I need to be this at this age, I need to have this kind of success, and just speak your truth, speak what you're supposed to bring into the world and be honest about it.
It's definitely a journey because it's scary. And there's a few things I'd say to that. I had to get to a place where I had to stop thinking that when is this going to happen for me? And just do it because I love it, Because all of my 20s, I wouldn't write because I didn't have the book deal yet. And it's like, how does that work? I have to write first. But I thought I was already behind at 21. That doesn't make any sense. But it was my own kind of like self-sabotage, self-doubt. And so I had to really get to the place where I was like, I'm writing and creating for me. I do that first. That's my first thing. And so it takes the pressure off of it needing to be a certain way. And that's how you can be authentic, because I think when you're trying to mimic success or trying to follow someone else's path, you think that if I'm honest and I'm really just me, then it's not going to do well because it doesn't look like this other person's path and their way of doing it. You can't really recreate success. I mean, in every creative industry, they try to do that, and then it really doesn't work. And people are aware of when it's inauthentic, and it's not even going to feel like when you pursue success via like inauthentic ways, it's not even going to feel like a success. You're going to feel like it's less than, because I've had that too, where I'm trying to recreate what someone else is doing. And then when you finally get that moment or whatever you've been going after, like, it's not even sweet. It's just bitter. You're just like, it's not bittersweet at all. You're just like, ooh, that doesn't even feel that good. How I'm so honest in my writing is I'm really honest with myself first. You can't really leap into, I'm going to tell everyone my most honest insecurities until you're doing that to yourself. And so, I would credit journaling to the way that I talk with my friends. I have like really good friendships and really good relationships with, people in my life and my husband and people that I can just be honest with. And then once I started recognizing that when I'm honest, especially online, people would be like, me too. Wow, I feel that way too. And then it would make me feel less alone. I was like, wow, this is actually like a really beautiful mechanism for me to kind of like heal myself through it. And that's not something that can be done really easily, because I think sometimes we don't need to share unprocessed feelings until, because then you're opening yourself up to what other people think. And, I need to be really clear with myself before I share honestly. And that's another reason why, I'm glad that I waited a little bit and that things didn't actually happen the way that I wanted them to when it came to my book. Because by the time I sat down to write Radically Content, I was like, yeah, I'm just going to say what I need to say. Like it was so clear to me that there would be no reason to be kind of not dishonest, but you're just like, kind of, you pull back on the truth a little bit because you're scared. And let me tell you, after my book came out, and tomorrow is actually the 1-year anniversary of Radically Content coming out, so I'm like feeling things, is that I felt really exposed. So if you're looking at someone else and thinking, oh, it's easier for them. No, I spent like 2 months feeling as if after my book came out, because I worked so hard to get the book out, that for some reason, I just didn't even think people were going to read it. It was so weird. Like I was so focused on just promoting it and getting it out there. And that the day after the book came out, I was like, oh my God, people are reading it. People are reading it, I narrated the audiobook, and nothing will really humble you like narrating your own book, because you're just like, why did I say all that? And you can't change anything. It's already done. It's printed. So you're just like, why was I this honest? Why didn't I just say a different thing? Why didn't I tell a different story? And you have to, and then you're in a booth with people that are listening, and you're like, oh my God, this is the most exposing thing that I've ever done in my life. So yeah, for 2 months, it felt like I didn't have skin on my body. That's how exposed I felt. So it's not like it necessarily comes easy. I just go, well, I'm afraid, but I still need to do it. So I'm just not going to cower to my fear. And that's really, I think, at the end of the day, what I do. I say, I'm afraid. All right, so what? I guess I got to do it anyway. Like, to say I'm not afraid is a complete lie, because I'm afraid of everything. I don't like putting myself out there all the time, but I still go, well, then you have to do it. Do it anyway.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. I'm glad that you admitted that, because I would have thought, wow, she's just really comfortable because even reading it, I'm like, I would not be brave enough to talk about this. So I'm glad that, first of all, you were brave enough and that you admitted that, yeah, it still is scary because it is vulnerable, but you put it out there and it's helping so many people. And I have a friend who got the audio version. She texted me. She's like, oh my gosh, have you read chapter 10 through 12? Oh my gosh, I'm like dying. And I'm like, okay. And I was like a chapter behind. And so I read chapter 10 and I was like, this is great. Like, it literally feels like you're our friend and we are going through a journey with you. So it's great. And it brings me to, it's a very interesting part of the book. When you mentioned a time in college where you were shamed for being your bright, creative, bold, and confident self. I believe you were in a marketing advertising competition and you were just so determined to win this for your school. And then students and even the faculty shamed you after your display of just being confident and wanting. I know I'm not explaining it as well, but essentially you had a chance to shine and you had your gifts being shown and you were really thriving and excelling over other people around you. And I have felt that with music. The amount of times where I wanted to have an opinion about my own song that was going to be placed with an artist and having a producer tell me, do you know how many Grammys I've won? Do you know how many award shows I've been to for my songs? How dare you say this about what I did for your song? And I'm like, okay, like I wrote the song, like, can I have an opinion about it? And so hearing that, it triggered those moments for me, and like having people tell me, you're not that talented. Like, you have no right to be songwriting. Why do you get the chance to be in music and blah, blah, blah. And it's just, I know I'm not the only one. And I know you've probably had other situations too. What would you say to someone who right now might be experiencing an environment that's making them feel guilt or shame for shining and for wanting to express their gifts?
Oh, such a good question. Because I didn't handle it the best way for myself at that time. I was still pretty young. I was in college. I didn't realize there was a massive power dynamic that I was still internalizing between like men and me and what I get to say and who I get to be. And I would say, please know what's at play. That was what I wish I had known at the time, that like, it wasn't really about me. And even though it was about me, but it was more about these like internal dynamics where like, I wasn't supposed to shine brighter than the boys. Like, I wasn't supposed to take the attention away from, especially when it comes to marketing and business and something like that. I was supposed to do my job because I was president of the team, right? That was my job. But I wasn't supposed to outshine the men, especially not the faculty advisor, especially not the couple of men that were on the team. I didn't realize all of that was at play. I just thought, I'm wrong. I'm bad. I did something. I was like, felt that I internalized that I had done something wrong by knowing that I was great. And I was like, that was my problem. My problem was knowing that I have something to bring to the table, that I know how to do all this. I was sitting there like liaising between like the communication design and the designers and the marketing team and the business. And then I was going to like professors and getting this and all of this. And then on top of it, won the presentation award for best speaker of the whole competition. Then we won as a team and I was the president. And it was like, I'm not supposed to know that. It's like, you can do all that. Sure, be great, but don't know it. Be humble. But more so, it's not really humble. Be like, how at that time, there was a lot of songs that were like, these girls are so beautiful, but they don't know it. And that's why they're beautiful. It's like, you're not supposed to know you're good. Because that's like the thing with the songwriting too, that you're talking about. You're not supposed to know that you have something on your hands that's good. And you're supposed to sort of do that. Oh my God, like, so was that good? does that make sense? Do you think that I'm like good at this? Whoa. And that's where the men can come in and go, yeah, you are. And they have power over you because they're the ones deciding that you're good enough. And I just like had known that I was good. And I was like, I am talented. And that like definitely started a pattern of, I wouldn't say that I went into full like hidden mode, but I definitely started questioning myself more. And I would say like, and that's why I say like, know what's at play, because as women, I think our MO is to like, we're going to internalize it and we'll take responsibility for it. Yeah, you're right. I shouldn't have said anything. I shouldn't have known that I was good. I should have been more humble, been more, unaware of my own talents. Whereas like with men, they are just like, they think they're talented even when they're not. Like the guys on the team were like literally the weakest links. They did nothing and wanted to take credit for everything. And they were put on the presentation team just because we needed 2 white guys. And so that's why I say, like, again, know what's at play, because there are dynamics that are kind of happening. It's not even serving us all. I wish someone had said, like, this isn't really about you and you just keep doing what you're doing, because if you're threatening them, that's on them. You can't actually be threatening. I'm like, me just doing what I came here to do is not a threatening thing. And I wish I had known that. And I think that would have helped me sort of process that experience a bit better, rather than I just felt guilty and like I had done something wrong for actually knowing that I was like, I think that started a pattern of sort of like an imposter syndrome I had never had before, where it was like, oh, wait, should I not know that I'm good at things? And I'm happy to say that that's a lot less now, because I'm like, I'm going to be good at things. Like, I'm allowed to know that I'm good at things. And speaking of going back to really fast, that's another Taylor Swift quality. She knows she's good at what she does, and she should.
The information you're hearing is what I wrote for our daily email, The Good Space Daily. So if you're already signed up, you'll have these tips in writing in your inbox. And if you're not already signed up and you're listening to this after the fact of us dripping them out live, we'll make it so that when you sign up, you can specifically ask for these emails and get them dripped out to you when you sign up. And that's the same with all the other topics and themes that we'll be covering for Feeling Your Best. So if you want to get these short daily reminders to access your authentic self in all areas of life and get resources, chances to win things, all of the good stuff, then make sure to sign up now. The link is in the show notes, or you can go to findyourgoodspace.com. First of all, yes, loved everything that you said. And I'm thinking back to some of those situations where I didn't handle them the way that I wish I did either, because I feel like, for example, like my boss from music one day sat me down and he's like, you need to be an a-hole. You are too nice. You need to be mean. You need to be rude. You need to do all these things. And I'm like, that's just not who I am. And so I feel like knowing that those dynamics are at play as a woman, knowing that there are people who are going to feel threatened by the gifts and the shining and all those things. I feel like obviously the takeaway I got was working on not internalizing that as something we've done wrong, just like brushing it off almost and being like, okay, that's a you problem. That's not a me problem. But if there is ever a time where we need to confront or say something, what is the way that we can do it in a kind and confident way and not like rude and abrasive? Because sometimes, at least for me, because I'm uncomfortable with confrontation, it's hard to know, okay, like I want to stand up for myself, or I want to like embrace my gifts, but also like, I don't know how to do this properly.
Yeah. I mean, I will say that experience taught me that I don't really want to work with men a lot anymore. So I tend to not work with men quite a bit. I get to have that choice, but I would say that it is very tricky. It is tricky because even though it's not about you, they do make it about you. It's kind of like, what's really at play here and the dynamics that are happening, but they don't. And so handling it and standing up for yourself, I think it comes down to like what's really worth it And when is it really necessary to have that conversation or to say something? And even though I think it's always necessary, sometimes you do have to kind of like pick your battles. This is something I have a really hard time with. I'm so idealistic, and I see how the world should be and how it could be for all of us. But then I also have to pull myself down and go, but the reality is, if I want the outcome that I want, I need to handle this a certain way. I could have sworn out that faculty advisor. I wanted to. I thought he was a complete jerk, but then I had to handle it a different way and sort of, I wouldn't say that I played nice, because I definitely kind of put him in his place a little bit, but granted, the stakes weren't that high. I mean, I wasn't going to lose out on a job because I was just in a, competition team. But, when it does come to a job, I mean, I think that there comes a time where you really do have to sort of come about it in a, I don't think that the screw you, man, like this and this is, unless you're like willing to end that relationship and end that commitment. Otherwise, it does have to be like handled in a more diplomatic way. I don't know. It's so hard being a woman. It's so hard. I don't have a perfect answer for this because I don't really have a lot of environments. I tend to attract working with, like, all my publishers have been women. all the people that I work with my book are women. I work for myself and most of my clients are women. But then sometimes there's dynamics with working with women that are tricky too. So I wouldn't say it's all perfect.
Absolutely. Well, I guess what I'm gathering from it is knowing your worth, your gifts, your talents, and then understanding the dynamics that people work within, and then just kind of navigating it without losing your sense of self, without losing that confidence in what you have, which brings me to the part where you talk about guilt. Like, that's one of the things that stops us from claiming our creative power. And you grew up Catholic. I grew up Catholic. There's a lot of guilt ingrained in that culture. And you talk about how you, and I know other people have felt the same way, where you felt guilt and shame, like people would reject you for doing well. So not only is it like people have actively done things to make you question yourself, but it's like moving forward. If I do well, does that mean continued rejection? Does that mean I dim my light? I keep myself small? I think that's also a cost that can come with internalizing people feeling threatened and telling you to dim your light. And it's a very interesting thing. And I definitely had to deal with guilt a lot growing up. And it's just something I finally feel like I'm not dousing myself in all the time. So I really appreciate what you said. And if you're listening to this and struggle with guilt as well, absolutely get this book, because that chapter is life-changing and you explain it so well.
What I've noticed is, and I didn't realize this before, is that actually, if I change my internal perception, it changes a lot of external perceptions. So what I mean by that is, I used to feel threatened by a woman's success if I felt she was doing quote unquote better than me. But once I started really acknowledging, wow, this woman, if I saw the effort involved in what this woman was doing, I'm like, hey, she sat down. Like, I would get jealous if someone was publishing a book and I hadn't published a book. But then I started going, wow, like, she sat down and wrote the book. I haven't wrote the book. She sat down and did the hard work of like dealing with her self-doubt and all these things. And she had to go up against her own belief system, and she had to make the time, and she did all of that, and started, really acknowledging and celebrating the work that she did. I was better able to step into my celebration and my success, because how you view other people is how you view yourself. So if you're judging everyone else, if you're saying they don't deserve that success, I don't like them now that they got success, or they're doing this or they're doing that, it's like you're going to then judge yourself and perceive that other people are that way. Like, all I've found, I used to worry like, oh, if I share too much on social media, people are going to get annoyed that I share. I've had more people tell me, you give me permission to celebrate myself, because you celebrate yourself. Like I get excited about my things because you're excited about your things. And you show me that like you can promote without it being like whatever judgment we have on like promotion. And you can actually know when you're good at something and you can like own that and feel good about it. And that has been shocking to me because I thought everyone was going to turn on me. Like, oh no, oh, now she's like unrelatable and da, 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 like my own judgments, and then I just let go of that. And I was like, I think people want to be on the journey. I think that that's fun. And I also think like that emboldens me to share the real things that are going on too, where I'm like, okay, there's this splashy thing that you see, but there's also this. And I just think like the more that we can do that, the more authentic we can be, the better we're all going to be for that. So that has alleviated a lot of my guilt too, where I'm just like, I'm not going to buy into it. And then I also don't want to buy into a system of guilt, especially for women, that then I'm perpetuating it and telling people they should feel guilty because I'm showing that, I think our example is more powerful than our words sometimes. And so I just have like that in my mind as I do it. If I celebrate women, then I don't have to feel guilty for my things because I think women should thrive.
This is a theme I noticed in your book as well, is what you make something mean to you really matters. And so like, what do you make someone else's success mean to you? And I think that's beautiful that you were able to change that into something that was more positive and inspiring for you. It kind of segues my mind into this amazing part where you talked about part of claiming our creative power is believing we deserve to, and also deserve the abundance that comes from it. So in Radically Content, you said, because if you think you don't deserve the life you want, I can tell you that taking the steps towards that life is nearly impossible. The deserving isn't an outcome, it's a beginning. It's the only beginning. And I'm going to like start crying just even saying it. I can't believe I'm going to cry because when I read that, I was like, oh my gosh. And I know I'm not the only person that has experienced this, but it's like we get so stuck in just wanting to feel like we deserve it, that's not even the beginning. Like and it just like lit this light bulb for me. Like deserving isn't an outcome. It's the only beginning. It's the beginning. And so I just had to share that. And I hope everyone listening to this like really hears this and takes this in because that's just, the freedom and just the aha that gave me was just unbelievable. And it lends well to you how you talk about opting out of societal expectations. Like, let's start there. Let's get to the point where we know we deserve it and then see what happens.
Well, because isn't that the thing? Like, we think that once we hit these certain milestones, I thought that. I'm not going to even use the proverbial you. I thought that once you hit these certain outcomes, you'll feel like you deserve them and you'll feel like you're good enough. And I have been very humbled in my life because I'm such a go-getter that I'll get those things. And then I'm like, wow, I still don't feel good enough. I still don't feel like I deserve to take up space in my own life. Like I don't feel like I'm even doing well, or I don't feel deserving of anything. Like I'll find a way to talk myself out of it. Okay, I'll get one thing, but it wasn't this many things, and it wasn't this, and it wasn't this much money, and it wasn't this deal, and it wasn't this. And all of a sudden I'm out of it. And I was like, I just think the answer is like, you have to know you deserve it before any of those things show up. Okay, I actually think like it's a gift to not have all of those things show up when you think they're going to do. That's why if you really look between the lines and hear between the lines with a lot of these people that we look up to that are incredible artists that are so famous and so big, they all say the same thing. They're like, I can't have all my self-worth attached to how my career goes. I can't have my self-worth attached to, I deserve to be loved because I have 1 million fans, or like, that's a recipe for actual misery. It's such a recipe for misery. And it's just the complete opposite of what society tells us. Like, you get to feel successful when you get these types of milestones and these types of things, and you don't get to be happy until you hit those things, and you don't get to feel like you deserve success or love or anything, or deserve your own praise, deserve your own joy, or deserve any of it until you don't get to call yourself a writer until you're published. You don't get to call yourself an actor until you've gotten this award, and you don't get to do this. It's just complete bullshit. Like, it's just, I'm sick of it, because it means only the smallest amount of people at the smallest percentage get to feel like they deserve to be happy, that they deserve their life, that they are worthy. That's not even fair. Like, it's not fair. There's some people that, like what we talked about earlier, that'll just never have even the access. So what does that say? That says that we have like our own internal worth and happiness is on some invisible hierarchy that we have to keep climbing. I mean, that's just so ridiculous. That's why there's something about Radically Content that I just love. It's that it's like this really pretty cover, and you think like it's gonna, and then I'm like, no, we're coming in hot. Like, we're coming in with some real, like, we're overthrowing the societal expectations. We're opting out. We're going to be anti this. It's just like, you don't know it. You don't know that that's what we're going to need, but that's what we're going to need.
Which is great, because honestly, who wants to look at something and be like, this is going to change everything I think about my life as I know it, and I'm good, I'm just going to pass it over. So it's like, at least you show it in a way that's like, pretty, come open my pages. And by then you're like, well, I'm already invested in, oh my gosh. And then you just like dive in. So I think it's brilliant. Like, that's brilliant marketing. I guess it was chapter 10, I think, is where you talk about like, what does your big life look like? Because you might not even want the awards or the publishing or whatever. You just might want it because society says you should. And so I actually made this little paper. I'm showing it on the screen right now, but it says my big life at the top. And you talk about what makes me happiest. What is success for me? What makes me feel proud? And I'm like, I'm going to like visualize this. And so I've just been writing throughout the week different things down that makes me happy, and like success makes me feel success, and or what I would see that as. And then like living with intention, how I'm spending my time, money, and energy. Because to me, that's just how I process, is I need to write it down. But I love it because it's not even a big ask either. So that's what I love. It's like, I can't believe it's this simple to kind of face myself and be honest about what I feel about what my life should look like.
Right. I'm like, I wish that was a college course. Like, that should be your general education in college. It's like,
yes,
first class you take is, what do you even think? Like, what do you even want? What even matters to you? And are you going on the trajectory that you want to go on? And then we're going to reassess at this age and this age and this age, because I'm just like, the way that people are following this like predetermined plan that doesn't even make them happy, it makes me so sad, because I'm like, it's really not that hard, but we're not ever told that you should like just sit down for a second, like take a breath instead of rushing to Friday, rushing through the weekend, getting back. And I get it. I get that like life does what it does. I'm not always intentional with my time. Sometimes life gets over my head, it really does. And I'm just like, I just got to get through it. But I'm always better for it when it doesn't even take that long. 10 minutes just to breathe for a second and be like, am I spending my days doing the things that matter to me? Am I using my time intentionally? And, I used to tell myself, but I don't have time. And then I'd be like watching 3 hours of Netflix show, which I'm not against. I love a good binge. Don't get me wrong. I'm not an overworking person. Like, I will definitely have many days like that. But I also have to intersperse some of that real kind of like self-care, self-love, because I think loving yourself is sometimes having a hard conversation with yourself. Like, one of the reasons I'm in the life that I have now is because I had to have some real hard conversations with myself of like, you cannot be on the couch watching everyone do what you want to be doing and then not do it. Like, at least give it an hour. a day. And then you can go to the count, do what you're going to do, you know? That's like harmful. It's harmful to yourself to not honor the callings within that are really true and honest. And it doesn't have to be all these big splashy things. I mean, Radically Content wasn't even published by one of the big 5 publishers, but I didn't take that as like, that's not success because it didn't hit these things. Radically Content didn't get on the New York Times bestseller list, but I still, a year on, I still get emails every single day from people saying it has like literally changed their whole life. So I'm like, I'm down to have both. Like I'm down to be on the bestseller list too. But if it doesn't, am I going to sit here and say I failed? Like, I don't see things that way. And I choose to always see how life is working for me, even when it's not. I'm like, okay, so I'm having a real bad week, month, few months. Okay, how is this working for me? What am I trying to learn? Okay, like I still will try to find how it's working for me, because otherwise, what's the alternative? Like the alternative is I just feel like crap all the time and life is against me. I'm not trying to tell other people that's how they should view their life. I'm just saying that for me, I have to live in my brain for 24 hours a day, as we all do. And so I would like to make that a nicer place than what it used to be, which was constant complaining and negativity. And that just didn't make me feel good. I just didn't like living in that brain.
I'm so happy that you were able to do that and then share your journey and what you've done in Radically Content. And I love what you said too, because really, I know my therapist had to kind of reel me in too, but she said like, not everything you do has to be tied to ambition. Because I told her I wanted to get back into songwriting, and I'm like, oh, I can get songs published and that can bring in money for this. And she's like, why don't you just enjoy it first? Like, just get to the enjoying part and be happy doing it and then see what happens from there. And I feel like when you think of your big life, like just throughout the day, I feel really happy right now. What just happened? What did I do? Write it down. I feel really proud of myself right now. What just happened? Okay, write it down. Like kind of just exist and experience and then ask those questions and see what comes up. And it doesn't have to be tied to ambition. And I just love that. And you're right. Like you want to enjoy being in your own head. So yes, I love it. I love it. I have a listener question. This one is from Taylor. She absolutely loves your book. She loves your Instagram, like everything. And she is curious about what your day-to-day looks like, how you schedule things. Do you go with the flow or both? And if you have any tips for stepping into and owning your power in life.
Day-to-day kind of, it depends. I mean, it used to be a lot more structured because I had a lot more consistent stuff going on. But now, because I'm more on like a project-based schedule, so whatever is like currently on my plate, I'm working on. But then I also am always thinking of long-term. So, I mean, typically I wake up around the same time every morning. I have breakfast. I write like my affirmations in a journal. That's really important to me. And it's like really just trying to set the tone for the day of like, this is how I want to feel today. It's not magic always, but at least it's like setting me on the right track. And then I usually go upstairs to my office and like work on whatever is just on my plate on that time. Right now, I just have to be really flexible because like with my novel, for example, I don't know when I'll get edits that I need to do. And then I need to action on that quickly. So there is just like a lot more flexibility than usual. And then in the middle of the day, I always exercise. And then I'm usually like done by that point, unless there's something pressing. When I work really focused. So I don't try to have a ton of distractions because I think 2 to 4 hours of focus work is better than like sitting at a computer for 6 to 8 hours and just dicking around for a bit. I'd want to get off the computer more. How I feel about stepping into your power. I mean, yeah, that's a good question. It's really about, I think, everything for me is from starting within. Like you have to feel like you have something to say. You have to feel, and that's not even saying like, then you have to say it. You just like have to feel that what you do matters, how you go about your life. Like, I think noticing what makes you unique, noticing your little quirks and really celebrating those. And, that's how I started stepping into my creativity, was because I was like, I'm weird and that's cool. Like, I do weird little things and I like that, and I have a unique way of looking at the world, and I'm just going to like celebrate that instead of constantly telling myself that's not worth whatever. And I think power really comes from knowing that like you matter, that you have worth. The world is going to tell you that power comes from outside of yourself. Someone gives you power. Someone puts you in a powerful position. Haven't you seen plenty of people in powerful positions where you're like, you don't have any personal power? Everything is derived by external crap that actually doesn't really mean a lot, but you've created almost like some people create like a mythology around themselves of like, I'm a powerful person. It's like, I don't feel that you have power. I feel that you have like some external stuff. So I think that's really important, is just like really listening to yourself, knowing yourself, and honoring yourself. You are worthy just as you are, without needing external milestones or anything to tell you that you are. Because I think a lot of us have this belief that we're going to derive our power and deserving and worthiness and all of this outside of ourselves. And it's always going to be internal. And then the world starts to notice it. Then people start to pay attention. It's the same. That's why when people say like, I found my partner when I wasn't looking for it. It's like, because you honored yourself and started saying, I am worthy just as I am. And that's attractive to everyone. It really is. I just think it's like a really beautiful journey that you have with yourself, and you start honoring who you are and the things that make you unique instead of, trying to be someone else. And you can do that through journaling. You can do that through many different ways. And then you start to realize that like you've built up power. I don't think it's something like, it really is something you kind of just build within. And then it becomes easier and easier. I think any of these types of questions, they never have like a quick answer, because it's always a journey. Like, it's a journey of healing things that are telling you you don't have power. Okay, you got to look at those. You can't ignore those. And you can't just say like, I have power. No, I have power. It's like, no, well, you have to look at the blocks and the things. And then, once you can clear some of those out, you start to see what makes you unique and beautiful and amazing. And then that sort of like creates this cascading effect.
Jamie, thank you so much for giving us your energy and your time. Where can people find you? What's coming up next for you? Share everything.
So you can find me on Instagram at Jamie Varon. I also have my website, jamievaron.com. I also have a newsletter, which I would really love for people to subscribe to. I send out a weekly email, and that's where you can find out what's all going on with me. Right now, the big focus is my novel coming out in the fall, my debut novel. So it's a really exciting time. Just got the final cover. Everything's it's going to start going into people are going to actually read it, which is terrifying, but amazing. And yeah, that's kind of the rest of the year.
We'll make sure to link everything you mentioned in the show notes. So if you're listening, you can hop on over there and go directly to whatever you want to go to. And yeah, thank you again.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
If you like what you're hearing so far and feel inspired or changed or just motivated after hearing this message, please consider joining our membership. We work so hard to dissect information and make it simple and digestible for you so you can go out in the world and be a light, connect to your authentic self. And we really want to continue being that landing place for you. So if you're considering even one message or brand to support, we hope that you'll consider ours. And if you want a link for that, it is in the show notes. Now it's time for an affirmation. I choose to opt out of societal expectations and create a big life that's meaningful to me. If you found today's tips inspiring or thought-provoking, share it right now on social media and make sure to tag me at Francesca A. Phillips or at Find Your Good Space, and also weigh in the comment section at findyourgoodspace.com. You can find links in the show notes. And if you have a spiritual or mindfulness problem that you want me to unpack on an upcoming The Good Space episode, or an awesome manifesting story you want to share, give my podcast phone line a ring right now at 917-719-0867. Also, don't forget to download my free morning routine guide. It's what helped me reduce my anxiety, increase productivity, and so much more. The link to everything I mentioned is in the show notes. See you soon.